Namaskar and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a philosophy that really challenges some of our most basic ideas about society, about progress, and even our own place in the universe, all using the text Prout in a nutshell as our map. So let's kick things off with a pretty big question. I mean, we live in this age of incredible technology, right? We have amazing art, music, literature, but does all that stuff actually make us civilized? This philosophy, it pushes us to look right past that shiny surface and really question the foundations of our modern world. And to really get a grip on this critique, we first have to unpack two words that we tend to throw around as if they mean the same thing: culture and civilization. The text suggests there's this critical, often missed difference between them, almost like a hidden flaw in how we think about progress. Okay, so first up, we've got culture, or samskriti. Think of this as, well, everything we do that expresses our humanity. How we eat, the art we make, the songs we sing, the stories we tell. And the key idea here is that deep down, this human culture is really one single whole thing that belongs to all of us. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Civilization, from this point of view, isn't just our culture. It's our culture plus a layer of rationality and self-control. It's about being reasonable, it's about restraint. And this leads to a pretty startling idea. A society can be incredibly, wonderfully cultured and at the same time not be civilized at all. And wow, this quote just drives that point home with some serious force. A nation can produce geniuses in art and science, all the signs of a rich culture. But if it then uses its incredible technology for something so merciless and destructive, then by this definition, it's profoundly uncivilized. So what's the fallout from this? What happens when you have this gap between cultural achievement and genuine rational control, when that flaw is just left to fester? Well, it swings the door wide open for some of the deepest forms of exploitation imaginable. The text lays out this incredibly calculated four-step playbook for how to dominate people psychologically. It's not random, it's a process. You start by making a group afraid. Then, you convince them that they're somehow less than, while at the same time you puff up the exploiters with a sense of being better than. The final move, you make that gap permanent. It's a methodical dismantling of the human spirit. And one of the nastiest tools in this whole process is something called pseudo-culture. This is basically when culture itself gets turned into a weapon. Instead of being used to lift people up, degrading or just plain vulgar ideas are pushed onto a group to shatter their spirit, to paralyze them from the inside so they can't even think about resisting. And believe me, the text does not pull any punches when it talks about the people behind these systems. It calls them cunning, selfish leaders who are absolute masters of manipulation, like human chameleons, just changing their colors, playing on people's emotions to hold on to power and serve themselves. So, in the face of this really grim picture of exploitation, what's the response? Well, it's this powerful, revolutionary shout. It's not a polite suggestion for a little bit of reform. It is a clear, absolute demand, an end to every single kind of exploitation, period. Okay, so if our modern civilization is this flawed, surely the answer is humanism, right? Focusing on human values, on our welfare, that has to be the way forward. Well, you'd think so. But the text tells us we need to dig a little deeper, because even this beautiful idea, it can have a shadow side. And that brings us to this concept of pseudo-humanism. It's a really clever trick, actually. It's when the language of helping people is just a cover story. A powerful group might come in and offer help, but what they're really doing is creating dependency, turning the very people they helped into a resource for their own economic or political advantage. So, the big takeaway here is that any philosophy that only focuses on humans is, well, it's just not going to work in the long run. By completely ignoring plants and animals, and by looking at everything and asking, what's its use to me, this limited way of thinking just creates conflict and throws everything out of balance. It's a worldview that, ironically, ends up hurting us too. All right, so this leaves us at a really important crossroads, doesn't it? We've picked apart the problem, we've even seen the cracks in what looks like an obvious solution. So, where do we go from here? What's the path forward? And now we get to the core solution presented in the text, a philosophy called Neohumanism. And it's presented as more than just an idea. It's offered as the ultimate shelter for a world that's really struggling. So what is Neohumanism? Well, you can think of it as a massive, radical expansion of our circle of empathy. It takes that core feeling of love from humanism and stretches it out to include everything in the universe, every animal, every plant, even the inanimate world. It's a call for us, as the most aware beings, to take on a deep responsibility for the well-being of the whole cosmos. And this philosophy really boils everything down to a fundamental choice. Two completely different paths you can walk. On one side, you've got the path of selfish pleasure, which is based on rigid ideas and self-interest, and always leads to exploitation. On the other side, you have the path of social equality, which is all about building a collective movement for the good of everyone.
Okay, so this isn't just some abstract theory. There's a practical three-stage path laid out here for how we can actually get to this new universal state of mind.
The journey, it starts with you, with the individual. The first step is about your own personal practice, about elevating yourself so you can be of better service to the world. From there, it expands outward, becoming a collective movement, a whole new wave of thinking that starts to change humanity. And finally, the last stage is the ultimate goal, a complete merging of your own self with the consciousness of the cosmos, where you achieve a true, limitless sense of universalism.
And this final quote just perfectly sums up the spirit of this mission. I love this. It's not about you going off and finding enlightenment by yourself. It says you must take everyone with you. It's a collective journey out of the darkness and into a brand new, brilliant dawn, not just for us, but for everything together. So we're going to end by bringing all of this right back home to you. The text says that dogma, those rigid, preconceived ideas that we never question, is one of the biggest things holding us back. So the path really begins with a small, personal act of freedom. So I'll leave you with this. What is one unquestioned belief in your own life that you could start to challenge right now, today?